Welcome to the CBIA BizCast powered by Google. I'm Amanda Marlow. What does Connecticut need to do to prepare high school students for the careers of today and tomorrow? That's the mission of the newly formed Connecticut Career Pathways Commission. Joining us today is CBIA President and CEO Chris DiPentima, who happens to be one of the 30 members on the commission. Chris, thanks for joining us on the BizCast.
Always good to be with you, Amanda.
You haven't been here actually on this new format of the BizCast, so we're happy to have you.
Okay, great to be here.
Thanks for taking your time
segment. Have me here.
So tell us a little bit about this commission in general. It was announced at the Workforce Summit that we had earlier this year in partnership with the state of Connecticut. But tell us a little bit about what it is.
Yeah, I think it's one of the better things that actually came out of session, even though it was an executive order. It was one of the highlights of this session. And what it is the governor is establishing another blue ribbon panel. He did something similar for childcare, which was pretty successful. And it's a commission of about 30 members focused on developing pathway programs in our public high school system off of the recommendations of the foundation report. And the commission is made up of a business community, government officials, labor, the teacher unions or the practitioners, and I know we'll get stakeholder feedback from parents, students, guidance counselors as well.
And what's the, in terms of a timeline for this commission to do its work?
It's a tight timeline. So we had our kickoff meeting in May, just not that long ago, and we'll have to have a report to the governor by December. That report will be a 5-year strategic plan for developing the pathway programs in our public school systems in Connecticut. So there'll be a lot of summer work. There's 4 pillars of the commission. There's a career-connected learning pillar, so how to get students connected to career opportunities while they're in high school. There's a pillar focused on developing the pathway guidelines and governance. How do you define a pathway? What pathways are critical in Connecticut? There's a pillar around work-based learning. So how do we get our students involved in the workforce while they're in high school, transportation, schedule issues. And then the 4th pillar is around statewide systems. I'm the liaison of that pillar. And essentially that pillar is about the systems, the metrics. What is good look like? How do parents and students know how to interact with the schools and where the pathways are? How do employers know where the pathways are? And really a comprehensive statewide system.
What do you think the biggest misconception about the system is right now?
The biggest misperception is that I think people think we don't need one because we have incredibly high-performing high schools and students in those high schools in Connecticut, and not enough people know that first, about 1/3 of our public high school students don't go to 2 or 4-year college or the military. That's about 12,000 students every year who graduate, and they go where? They're just out there. A lot of it was noted during the Off-Track Disconnected Youth report that Dalio sponsored or funded that made some awareness around that. The second piece is people know that we have a lot of job openings in Connecticut, more than 80,000 job openings right now. A lot of people don't know that more than half of those job openings only require a high school degree or GED equivalent. So this disconnect is really a misperception or not known well enough. Students graduating but don't have opportunity, and we have these job openings that need these students. And so that's one of the biggest, I think, misunderstandings that's going on.
And with the setup of the state, just the alignment of all of these things in every corner of the state kind of being on the same page.
A lot of silos. There's pockets of best practices across Connecticut, but there's not a statewide, uniform, standard definition of even what a pathway is. Some schools may be offering woodwork and say, okay, we're preparing these kids for the construction industry. Well, are you really? Now we have financial literacy requirement in our public high school system. That's personal financial literacy. But I think some people think we're preparing them to go into accounting or some other finance professions. And so there isn't a real statewide understanding of what's needed, how to do it. Again, to your point, we have these pockets of excellence or best practices.
And there's a lot of corners, in terms of representation on the commission, but leading the commission is former Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona. How important do you think it is to have his voice at the table here and also kind of leading the charge?
I think it's incredibly important to have Miguel's voice at the table. He's seen best practices in other states on what's successful at a statewide level, what states like Delaware and Tennessee can do to have work-based learning, career-connected learning, pathway programs in their high schools. I think Miguel comes at it from wide-eyed. He's been out of Connecticut long enough where he's not necessarily biased from the pocket of excellence or we tried this but we weren't able to achieve. He's coming at this full-fledged, a lot of energy, and really bringing some best practice from around the country. And I think having someone of his stature as well leading this shows the importance behind it, shows not only that the governor really wants it, the business community wants it, educators want it, we need it for our students, and that there's this really rallying cry to get this done in a short period of time, as we talked about, but it's really, really important work.
Yeah, certainly a short period of time. And there needs to be a level of like constructive criticism, right, involved that I think he can bring from that perspective of having seen it done in other states.
And I think he's willing to take that feedback too. He's not going to shy away from the challenges or the fact that we've all been having these conversations for several years now and haven't been able to get a statewide pathway system done in Connecticut. He's taking that feedback, not looking at it negatively, looking at it as an opportunity, and then basically bringing it together. If you think of it, laser focus, bringing us all together to achieve the overall mission that we all have a common alignment around.
As we mentioned at the beginning, the CBIA Foundation has done quite a bit of work, recently released this lovely workforce and education blueprint that's behind us. But tell me how you see that helping influence the work of the commission.
Well, it was the catalyst for why the governor created this. We had been talking about it. He was aware of that misperception or the lack of understanding that I talked about. He's aware of the high school students graduating and the job openings and that this misalignment was there. The report was a catalyst for him to get this pathway commission going. One of the Pathway Commission has already shared a library with the 30 commission members, and the library has some other state reports. It has some reports from Connecticut, and the foundation's report is probably one of a handful of reports that have been done in Connecticut around high school pathways. So it's going to be a critical, not necessarily a roadmap, but it's going to be a critical source of information for the commission, because what the foundation did was not only identify where the challenges are, but also identify potential solutions to those challenges as something to put out there for the commission to really think about. So it's really going to be, I think, a standard playbook for the commission to look at for the foundation and take some of the recommendations and move forward with them.
If I'm a business, leader in Connecticut who says that's still number one thing that keeping me up at night is, do I have enough people? How can I get involved in these conversations? Yeah,
the nice thing is there's multiple ways.
Putting a bug in your ear?
Well, you certainly can reach out to me. Most businesses do, and that's my representation on the commission, is representing those businesses. We have one of CBI's directors, Nicole Russo's on the commission, representing really the small, mid-sized manufacturers, Electric Boat representing the large manufacturers, Hartford Healthcare representing the large healthcare. But certainly reaching out to me, I think it could be a way for the businesses to interact with the commission. We are going to have stakeholder forums where we work our way around the state, talking to businesses and parents and students and get their input into what the commissions need. But the commission's also going to have a very public way to interact with them. A website will be built, and so people will be able to send in direct information to Secretary Cardona or other folks of the commission. I will say the commission is well staffed from a support system, which is great to see, because not only is time of the essence, but that staff is going to be able to handle all those incoming inbound suggestions or requests that I know we'll get from the business community and beyond.
What does success look like to you right now in the short term from the business community? Success
is going to be all of us knocking down our silos. I think that's going to be critical early on as we go through these 4 pillars. Is we know what work-based learning looks like in one area of Connecticut, but maybe not is different in another area of Connecticut. And how can we standardize that to be a statewide work-based learning? How can we standardize what is statewide pathway programs? What is statewide student career connection? So that success early in the summer will be, are people willing to put away our sandboxes, if you will, and play in one big sandbox as we develop this commission? Ultimate success will be that 5-year report that we deliver to the governor and the legislator in December, and then enactment of that report next legislative session. A lot of the recommendations will be in there. But we'll be able to judge early success if people are working together, common vision, common mission, and really kind of putting away their own individual silos and their own individual agendas.
Well, thank you so much, Chris. We appreciate you being on. A constant challenge for employers is navigating Connecticut's complex employment laws. Our recent Human Resources Conference featured an in-depth conversation into the state's expanded paid sick leave and FMLA laws with Connecticut Department of Labor attorneys Jennifer Devine and Heidi Lane. Here's a portion of that conversation.
1127, all of you will be covered. All your folks will be covered by the paid sick, and they're already covered by CTFMLA. There are a few exceptions, but most of you. So who's eligible? For CTFMLA, all you have to do is have worked for the employer for 13 weeks. That's it. no number of hours. And for paid sick, it's pretty much everyone, except for seasonal. And seasonal doesn't mean what you think it means. It doesn't mean seasonal, like winter, spring. What it means is 120 hours.
Days.
That's what I said. I said 120 days. I don't know what you heard. So if someone hits that 121 days, they're no longer seasonal. So you have to keep track of your people who are not working full-time every day. So keep track. 12 weeks, job protected in a 12-month period. And if the woman has incapacity during the pregnancy, she gets 2 extra weeks. For paid sick, 40 hours per your benefit year. You choose the benefit year. The accrual rate is 1 hour for every 30 worked. Notice, we all know, for CTFMLA, as much notice as you can, 30 days if it's foreseeable, but as soon as practicable is what you have to give. No advance notice for paid sick, but also as soon as practicable. Medical cert is required. No, you can require a med cert under FMLA, but no documentation for the paid sick. And for the reasons for the absence, serious health condition, this is FMLA, serious health condition, care for a family member, birth, bonding, foster, or adoption, military call-up, remember no questions, and military caregiver. For paid sick, it's an employee or family member who has a health care appointment, the employee's own mental health wellness day, an employee or family member who's a victim of family violence, or an employer or school closed by a public official, or an employee or family member poses a health risk. Who is a family member? Same for both. Spouse, sibling, child, grandparent, parent of an employee, individual who's related to the employee by blood or by affinity. And what that means is it's someone who has such a close personal relationship with the employee that it is as if they have a familial relationship. And that's the same.
So we just wanted to highlight some issues of note with FMLA to make sure you're aware. So it can be a continuous absence or intermittent. Sometimes we still get questions from employers that they don't want to let an employee work part-time or on a reduced schedule or intermittently. Unfortunately, for you guys, FMLA allows that, and you have to allow it. I know it's inconvenient, but that's just the way it is. In Connecticut, an employee can preserve up to 2 weeks of their paid time off while they're on FMLA, even if the employer has a policy that says that employees have to use their PTO while they're on FMLA. So if they have any time, they are allowed to preserve it, and you have to ask them if they want to do that. Another weird Connecticut quirk is that employees may use up to 2 weeks of accumulated sick leave for the serious health condition of a parent, spouse, son or daughter, or for birth or adoption. So a lot of employers, if they have a separate sick policy, it may provide that they can only use sick leave for their own illnesses. That's sort of been upended by the paid sick leave law, but let's say they've already used that time. They can use that sick leave bank for other people if it's FMLA, so if they're caring for a family member in this category. That's not in the federal law. And then it's job protected. We do see a lot of cases where people are not being reinstated to their position. That is really important. Employers really have to pay attention to that. And we mean the same position if it's still available, okay? Just because you got someone else to fill in and you like them better, that doesn't mean the position's not available. Someone is still doing that job. So that job is there. They have to return to that job. You can't arbitrarily put them on a different shift or a different location that's going to be inconvenient for them if their job's still there. So those are things you really have to pay attention to. This is also an issue we see. So someone's on intermittent leave. They've given you the medical certification. It says they're going to be out up to 3 times a week, 4 hours each time. The employee is calling out appropriately when they take the time, telling you it's FMLA. You cannot ask for doctor's notes for each absence. You have the medical certification. As long as the employee is using their FMLA and it aligns with what's on the medical certification, that's it. If there is a problem where the employee is taking more time than the MedCert allows, then you're going to want to ask for a recertification from their doctor to see if those other additional absences should be covered. Otherwise, those are going to be not covered and would be looked at under your normal attendance policy. And this is the last thing. I don't think employers are really aware of this piece of FMLA. If an employee is medically unable to perform their original job at the end of their FMLA time, the employer must transfer them to work to a position that is suitable to their physical condition and their experience, or what's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know, I wasn't listening.
You know what I'm saying. They have to be eligible for the position.
Eligible, yeah.
If it exists. You don't have to make up a job for them, and it may include part-time work or work at lesser pay, because the other option is they are terminated because they can't come back to work. So just make sure that you look into that. I mean, the ultimate piece after that is ADA accommodations, which is out of our realm, but we're always reminding employers if the FMLA is expired and someone might need additional time off or additional accommodations because they're not fully able to work, you need to enter the interactive process. Okay, some paid sick leave issues of note. This does apply to all employees. So the old law had all these carve-outs, right? That doesn't exist anymore. It applies to full-time, part-time, per diem, whatever. The only exception is that seasonal piece. The employee must begin accruing on their first day of employment. So a lot of employers think, oh, they don't accrue until they've been there 120 calendar days. No, that's just the cutoff period for when they can start using the time. But once they start working, they have to be accruing paid sick leave. So you have to make sure that that is happening as they work. You have to display the posters so that your employees can see them. We have them in Spanish and in English, so they're there on our website for you. And then a thing that we get a lot of questions on is you have to decide if you're going to front load the 40 hours or if you're going to have your employees accrue it. Totally up to you. Front loading is easy, but not everybody wants to do that because maybe they have a lot of part-timers and they don't know if they're going to accrue a full 40 hours. But front loading sort of takes a lot of the mechanical issues out of paid sick.
So what do you have to do? The worker notifies the employer they need time off from work. So what do they say? I'm out sick. I have a doctor's appointment or something. So you have to determine, okay, could this be paid sick leave? Do they have time? Could this be FMLA? Are they eligible? And so you have to consider all of that when someone calls out. We've always said that if someone calls out and just says they are sick, that does not necessarily trigger FMLA, because you need a little more information than that to know whether you need to start the MedCert process. But that's enough to at least trigger paid sick leave.
We're going to close out this episode with some of the top stories you may have missed. Connecticut added 5,700 jobs in April, the strongest monthly gain since the middle of 2020. However, another jump in the unemployment rate and further sharp declines in the labor force highlighted the ongoing volatility in Connecticut's job market. Entrepreneur and technology leader Ari Santiago was appointed as interim chair of the Board of Regents for the Connecticut State Colleges and University System. Santiago has served on the board since 2020 and succeeds Marty Guay, who stepped down May 18th. DiPentima applauded the appointment, saying Santiago is exactly the kind of leader to restore trust and transparency in the CSCU system. Connecticut regulators and business leaders are signaling a new era of collaboration on regulatory reform. Speaking at CBIA's May 14th Energy and Environment Conference, Deep Commissioner Katie Dykes said the newly implemented release-based cleanup regulations represent one of the most significant environmental regulatory overhauls in decades and could serve as a model for future modernization efforts.
If we're really invested in having an effective environmental regulatory framework, we have to be constantly checking in with some of these foundational, programs that have been put in place over the years to make sure they're still fit for purpose, and to be willing to have the hard but constructive conversations with our partners in industry and other stakeholders about what changes we need to make.
That's a wrap on this week's BizCast. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a new episode. In the meantime, give us your feedback and let us know if there are any guests you'd like to hear from by emailing us at bizcast@cbia.com. And remember, you can listen, like, and subscribe to our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. For a full list of episodes, head on over to cbia.com.